I realized something was off with Caleb the night he canceled a date because he said he was too tired, and then stayed up with me until 3 in the morning talking about absolutely nothing. That was the first time I started wondering. Because this was Caleb we're talking about. The guy who, for as long as I'd known him, always had a girl somewhere in the picture. A girlfriend, a situationship, we're just talking, or at the very least 3 different girls blowing up his phone. He was the kind of guy who didn't even try and still got attention, tall, athletic, that easy confidence that made people feel comfortable around him. And then suddenly, nothing. No dates. No stories. No girls coming over. At first, I didn't think much of it. People go through phases. Breakups mess with you. Life gets busy. But then the pattern kept going. And then he started spending more time with me. My name's Raymond. I'm 23, and Caleb and I have been friends since sophomore year of college. We met in a group project, bonded over complaining about a professor, and somehow never stopped hanging out after that. After graduation, we ended up renting an apartment together. It wasn't planned. We just both needed a place, and it made sense. We got along easily. Same schedule, same sense of humor, same low-maintenance friendship where you could sit in silence, and it didn't feel awkward. The only complication? I'd been quietly into him for almost 2 years. Not in a dramatic, tortured way. I'd made peace with it. Caleb was straight. Very straight. The kind of straight guy who talked about girls constantly, asked my opinion on outfits for dates, and once made me help him rewrite a text to a girl for 40 minutes. So yeah, I'd accepted my role. Best friend. Good roommate. Nothing more. Which is why the changes didn't hit me all at once. They crept in. First, he stopped going out. Emily invited me to this thing tonight, he said one Friday, standing in the kitchen, staring at his phone. You going? I asked. He hesitated. I don't know. I kinda don't feel like it. That was new. Caleb never turned down a social thing. He didn't go. Instead, we ordered takeout and watched a terrible action movie while he roasted every plot hole like it was his full-time job. I didn't question it. Then it happened again. And again. A few weeks later, I noticed something else. His phone had gotten quiet. Normally, it was always lighting up. Notifications, Snapchat, texts, whatever. Now it just sat on the counter half the time, untouched. One night I finally asked, "What happened to all your girlfriends?" I said casually from the couch. He looked up from the floor where he was stretching after a workout. "They're not my girlfriends. You know what I mean." He shrugged. "I don't know. Just not really into it lately." That answer stuck with me longer than it should have. Because Caleb wasn't a not into it kind of guy. Around that time, he started working out more at home instead of the gym, which meant he was around more, which meant I was noticing more. Like how he'd walk around in gym shorts and no shirt without even thinking about it. How he'd flop down next to me on the couch instead of taking the chair across the room. How he'd started this habit of nudging me with his foot when he wanted my attention instead of just calling my name. Little things. Normal things. Except they didn't feel normal to me. One Saturday afternoon, we were grocery shopping together. Nothing exciting, just the usual routine. We were arguing over what kind of cereal to get when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and immediately rolled his eyes. "Who is it?" I asked. "Jessica, the one you went out with last month." "Yeah." "You gonna answer?" He stared at the screen for a second, then hit decline. I blinked. "Damn. Cool." I told her I wasn't looking for anything. "You've never let that stop you before." He didn't smile at that. Instead, he tossed the phone into the cart and said, a little quieter, "I just don't feel like dealing with it anymore." There was something different in his tone. Not annoyed. More like tired. That night, we ended up sitting on the balcony with a couple beers, the city lights glowing below us. It was one of those quiet evenings where the conversation just drifted. At some point, I asked, "So what's the deal, really?" "With what?" "You." "Avoiding women." "This is new." He didn't answer right away. He took a sip of his beer, leaned back in the chair, and stared out at the skyline. "I don't know," he said finally. "It just feels forced lately." "Dating?" "Yeah. The whole thing. Talking, flirting, pretending you're interested when you're not sure you actually are." That didn't sound like Caleb at all. "You've never had a problem with that before," I said. "Maybe I just didn't think about it before." There was a long pause. Then he added, almost like he was thinking out loud. "Or maybe I was trying too hard to like something I wasn't really into." My stomach tightened. I kept my voice neutral. "So what are you into?" He didn't look at me. "Honestly," he said quietly, "I'm still figuring that out." The air between us shifted. Not in some dramatic way. Nothing obvious. But the silence after that felt heavier than usual. And for the first time since I'd known him, I started wondering if this change had something to do with me. I told myself not to overthink it. I told myself he was just going through a phase. I told myself a lot of things. But then a few nights later, something happened that made it impossible to ignore. Because Caleb came home early from a party, and instead of going to his room like he normally would, he walked straight into mine. Caleb didn't knock. He just pushed my door open like he always did, except this time it was almost midnight and he was supposed to be at some rooftop birthday thing with a girl named Amanda. I was in bed, laptop on my chest, pretending to watch something while actually scrolling mindlessly. He stood there for a second, leaning against the frame. "You're home early," I said, trying to sound casual. "Yeah." That was it. Just yeah. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. Not fully, just enough. I sat up a little. "Everything okay?" He ran a hand through his hair, the slightly messy, just back from a party look, and let out a breath. "I left. I can see that." He gave me a look. "You know what I mean." I waited. He didn't speak right away. He just walked over and dropped onto the edge of my bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Caleb had always been physically comfortable around me. Shoulder bumps, random wrestling over stupid stuff, casual leaning. But sitting on my bed at midnight after ditching a girl? That was new. "She tried to kiss me," he said finally. I blinked. "Okay." And I just didn't want to. There it was again. That tone. Not disgusted. Not confused. Just honest. "You didn't like her?" I asked. "She's great." "Then what's the problem?" He looked at me then. Actually looked at me. "I don't feel anything." The way he said it made my chest tighten. I swallowed. "Maybe you're just not into her specifically." That's what I thought at first. He shook his head. "But it's not just her." Silence stretched between us. I could hear my own heartbeat, which was ridiculous. He shifted slightly, his knee brushing mine. Neither of us moved away. "I keep trying," he said quietly. "I keep thinking if I just meet the right girl, it'll click. But it never does. It's like I'm playing a role I got used to." My brain was screaming not to jump to conclusions. "Roles change," I said carefully. "Yeah." Another pause. Then, softer. "Ray, can I ask you something?" That was the first time he'd shortened my name like that. My throat felt dry. "Sure." "Did you always know?" My stomach dropped. "Know what?" "That you like guys." The room felt smaller. He wasn't looking at me now. His gaze was fixed somewhere on the floor. I forced myself to breathe. "Why are you asking?" "Just answer." I hesitated. I'd never really talked about my coming out story with him. He knew I was gay, obviously, but we'd never gone deep into it. "Not always," I said finally. "I figured it out in high school. Took me a while to accept it." "What did it feel like?" The vulnerability in his voice was subtle. Most people wouldn't have caught it. I did. Confusing, I admitted. Like something wasn't lining up with what I was supposed to want. He nodded slowly. "That's exactly it." The words hung there. I didn't know what to say. He finally looked back up at me. "Do you think it's possible to not realize until later?" My pulse was loud in my ears. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It happens. With people you already know?" That question hit differently. "Sometimes," I replied. He held my gaze for a second too long. And then he looked away. "This is so messed up," he muttered, almost to himself. "What is?" "I don't know what I'm doing." The tension in the room had shifted into something electric. He stood up abruptly and started pacing. "I keep thinking about stuff," he said. "About moments. Things that didn't make sense before." "Like what?" He stopped walking. "You." The word landed heavy. "Me?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Yeah." He let out a frustrated breath. "Like how I'd rather stay in with you than go out with any of them. Or how when they touch me, I don't feel much. But when you..." He cut himself off. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "When I what?" I asked. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth from his body. "When you touch me," he said quietly. My entire body went still. "I thought I was imagining it," he continued. "Like maybe I was just overanalyzing normal stuff. But tonight when she kissed me, I kept thinking about how it didn't feel like when you lean against me on the couch." I couldn't breathe. He searched my face, like he was looking for something. Panic, rejection, confirmation. "Tell me I'm crazy," he said, almost pleading. I swallowed. "You're not crazy." That was all I could manage. His jaw tightened. "I don't know what this means." "You don't have to figure it out all at once," I said. He exhaled slowly. Then he did something that sent my brain into complete chaos. He reached out and placed his hand on my waist. Not accidental, not playful, deliberate. The contact was light, but it burned. "Do you feel that?" he asked. I nodded because words were impossible. He stepped closer. "So I'm not making it up." "No," I whispered. For a second, neither of us moved. The air felt thick. And then he did something even worse. He let his thumb slide slightly against my side. Not inappropriate, just testing, but it was enough. "Ray," he murmured, and the way he said my name. God, I knew this was the point of no return. And judging by the way his breathing had changed, he knew it too. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Caleb's hand was still resting on my waist, his thumb barely shifting against my side, like he was testing whether I'd pull away. I didn't. I couldn't. The room felt quiet in that heavy way where every small movement sounded louder than it should. His breathing. Mine. The faint noise of traffic outside. "Ray," he said again, softer this time. I forced myself to look at him. He looked nervous. Not the confident, easy Caleb everyone knew. His jaw was tight, his eyes searching my face like he was bracing for me to shut this down. "I don't want to screw this up," he said. "You're not," I replied automatically. "You don't know that." He wasn't wrong. If this went badly, it wouldn't just be some awkward moment. We lived together. We'd built our whole adult routine around this friendship. But the truth was, it had already changed. The moment he walked into my room, the moment he asked those questions, the moment he touched me like this. "What are you feeling right now?" I asked carefully. He hesitated. Confused, he admitted, but not in a bad way. His hand shifted slightly, sliding from my waist to rest more firmly at my side. "I keep waiting for this to feel wrong," he continued. "Or weird. Or forced." "Does it?" He shook his head slowly. "No." That word settled deep in my chest. "But I'm scared," he added. "Of what?" "Of what happens if I'm right." I understood that fear. Because if he was right, nothing between us would ever be simple again. I took a breath. "You don't have to prove anything tonight." "I know." But he didn't move his hand. If anything, he stepped a little closer. Our knees were almost touching now. "I've been thinking about this for weeks," he said quietly. "All the little things I didn't notice before. How comfortable I am around you. How I don't feel like I'm performing. How when you're not home, the apartment feels empty." My heart tightened. "That's just friendship," I said, even though my voice didn't sound convinced. "Is it?" His eyes held mine. "Because I don't feel this way with anyone else." The space between us felt smaller. He lifted his other hand slowly, like he was giving me time to stop him if I wanted. I didn't. His fingers brushed my arm. Light. Careful. "You'd tell me if I was crossing a line, right?" he asked. "Yeah." He searched my face one more time. Then he did something simple that somehow meant everything. He leaned forward and rested his forehead against mine. Not a kiss. Not even close. Just contact. Warm. Steady. Careful. And the second it happened, I felt his shoulders drop slightly, like something inside him finally relaxed. "Oh," he breathed. "What?" I whispered. "This feels right." My chest felt tight in the best and worst way at the same time. Neither of us moved for a few seconds. Then he pulled back just enough to look at me. "I don't want to rush this," he said. "I don't want this to be some panic decision or a curiosity thing that messes with your head." I appreciated that more than I could explain. "Then don't rush," I said. He nodded, but his hand was still on my side, and he still hadn't stepped away. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yeah." If I hadn't said anything tonight, would you ever have told me? That question hit harder than I expected. I hesitated. "No," I admitted. "Why not?" "Because you were straight." He let out a quiet breath. "Yeah, I thought I was too." There was a strange, almost nervous smile on his face now. "Guess I've been avoiding girls for a reason." I laughed softly. "That explains a lot." He smiled a little more at that. Then the moment shifted again. Subtle, quiet, but different. Because instead of stepping back, he stayed close. Really close. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath when he spoke. "I don't know what label this is," he said, "or what it means long term. You don't need to know yet. I just know," he swallowed. "I keep wondering what it would be like to kiss you." My heart stopped. He watched my reaction carefully. "You don't have to answer that," he added quickly. "I'm not trying to push anything. I want that too," I said before I could overthink it. Silence. His eyes flicked to my mouth, then back to my eyes. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes." He took a slow breath. And for the first time since he'd walked into my room, Caleb looked nervous. Not confident. Not playful. Careful. He moved closer, slowly enough that I could stop him at any second. I didn't. His hand slid from my side to the back of my neck. Warm. Steady. And then he paused, just inches away. Ray, he said quietly. Yeah. If this changes everything. It already has. That seemed to settle something in him. Because this time, when he leaned in, he didn't stop. When Caleb kissed me, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or desperate like I half expected. It was slow, careful, like he was paying attention to every second of it. His hand stayed at the back of my neck, steady and warm, holding me there just enough to make it feel intentional without forcing anything. For a moment, he barely moved, just the light contact of his lips against mine. Then he exhaled, and that small breath, that tiny shift, was what made it real. I felt his other hand tighten slightly at my side, like he needed something to ground himself. The kiss deepened just a little, still gentle, still testing, and then he pulled back. Not far, just enough that our foreheads almost touched again. His eyes were open, searching my face. Okay, he whispered, like he'd just confirmed something to himself. I swallowed. Okay. He nodded slowly, his expression somewhere between relief and disbelief. That didn't feel confusing. I let out a quiet breath I hadn't realized I was holding. No, I said. It didn't. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he did something very Caleb-like, something that made the whole situation feel both more real and more terrifying at the same time. He laughed softly. Wow, he muttered. I really did just come home from a party with a girl and end up kissing my roommate. I couldn't help smiling. Life comes at you fast. He shook his head, but he was still smiling too. Then his expression turned serious again. I don't regret that, he said. Good. But I also don't want to pretend I have everything figured out now, he added. Because I don't. I'm not expecting you to. He studied my face for a second. You're being really calm about this. I've had 2 years to emotionally prepare for the possibility of you ruining my life, I said. He blinked. Wait, what? I immediately regretted saying it. But it was too late. You've liked me for that long? He asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded. Something changed in his expression. Not discomfort. Something heavier. Why didn't you ever say anything? He asked. Because you were straight. And happy. And I didn't want to make things weird. He looked down for a second. Then he stepped closer again. This time, there was less hesitation. Ray, he said quietly. You didn't make this weird. I know. But if this turns out to just be you figuring things out. It is me figuring things out, he said honestly. That stung a little, even though I appreciated the honesty. But then he added, but you're not an experiment. I looked at him. I've been pulling away from girls for weeks, he continued. I've been thinking about you for weeks. Tonight didn't come out of nowhere. That eased something tight in my chest. He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly looking a little awkward. I don't know what this becomes, he admitted. But I know I don't want to pretend nothing happened. Me neither. There was a quiet moment. Then he glanced toward the hallway. I should probably go to my room, he said. That surprised me more than anything else. Yeah, I agreed, even though part of me didn't want the moment to end. He nodded, but he didn't move right away. Instead, he reached out and squeezed my side gently, almost the same way he had earlier, but this time it felt more familiar. Less testing, more certain. Then he stepped back. At the door, he paused. Ray, yeah. If this gets awkward tomorrow, just tell me. It won't, I said. He gave a small nod. Then he left. The next morning was worse. Because now there was history sitting between us. I woke up early, which never happened, and spent 20 minutes staring at the ceiling replaying everything from the night before. The kiss. The conversation. The way he'd said you're not an experiment. Part of me was excited. Part of me was terrified. And a very loud part of me was waiting for him to come out of his room, acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard his door open. My shoulders tensed automatically. His footsteps came down the hall. Then he walked into the kitchen. And for a second, we just looked at each other. There was a small pause. Then Caleb did something that erased about half my anxiety. He walked straight up to me. And without saying anything, he leaned in and kissed me again. Quick. Soft. Morning simple. Then he pulled back. Good morning, he said casually, like this was the most normal thing in the world. I stared at him. You just woke up and chose chaos, I said. He grinned. Actually, he said, reaching for a mug. I woke up and realized I wasn't avoiding girls. I raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah. He glanced at me. I was avoiding everyone who wasn't you. And that was the moment I realized something important. Caleb wasn't just figuring things out. He'd already started choosing me. But what neither of us realized yet was that figuring this out as roommates was about to get a lot more complicated. Living with someone you just started kissing is a special kind of psychological torture, because it's not like dating where you get space between seeing each other. No, it's brushing your teeth next to the guy who kissed you 12 hours ago. It's pretending to casually scroll your phone while he walks out of his room in sweatpants and no shirt. It's trying to act normal while your entire nervous system is on fire. The first few days after the kiss felt unreal. Caleb didn't backtrack. He didn't act weird. He didn't pretend it didn't happen. If anything, he leaned into it. Subtly. One evening, we were on the couch watching some show neither of us cared about. He sat closer than usual. Our thighs were pressed together. Not accidental. Halfway through the episode, he reached down and laced his fingers with mine. Just like that. Like we'd done it 100 times before. I glanced at him. He didn't look at me, but I could see the faint tension in his jaw. "You good?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," he said. Then after a second, "This still feels right." That word again. Right. He squeezed my hand once, then relaxed. And that's how we sat for the rest of the episode. But outside our apartment, that was different. 3 nights later, we got invited to a small get-together at a mutual friend's place. Nothing wild. Just drinks, music, usual crowd. On the walk there, Caleb seemed quiet. "You nervous?" I asked. "A little." "About what?" He hesitated. "I don't know how I'm supposed to act." The honesty in that made my chest ache a little. "You don't have to act like anything," I said. "We don't owe anyone a public announcement." He nodded slowly. But once we were there, I noticed something. Girls still gravitated toward him. Old habits don't disappear overnight. One of them, Maya, I think, walked straight up to him with a smile and touched his arm like she'd done 100 times before. I watched his body language carefully. Normally, he'd lean in, smile back, flirt. This time, he stepped back. Subtle, but clear. "Hey," she said. "You disappeared on me last month." "Yeah," he replied, polite but distant. "Sorry about that. You owe me a redo." He glanced at me. Just a quick look. Then back at her. "I don't think that's a good idea." Her smile faltered. "Why not?" He hesitated for half a second. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I'm seeing someone." My heart slammed into my ribs. She blinked. "Since when?" "Recently." She tried to laugh it off. "Well, bring her around sometime." He didn't laugh. "It's not a her." The noise around us felt like it faded for a second. Maya's expression shifted. Confused. Then surprised. "Oh," she said. Caleb didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. She nodded slowly, mumbled something polite, and walked away. I stood there, frozen. He turned to me. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "You just did that," I said. "Did what?" "Came out. Casually. At a party." He shrugged, but I could see his pulse in his neck. I wasn't going to lie. I stared at him. "Caleb." "What?" That wasn't small. He held my gaze. "I don't want to hide you." That hit harder than the kiss had. The rest of the night felt different. A couple people gave us curious looks. A few whispered things. Nothing dramatic. But there was a shift. And for the first time, I saw Caleb navigating a world that wasn't automatically built for him. On the walk home, he was quiet again. "Regret it?" I asked. "No," he said immediately. Then, softer. It felt good. Saying it out loud. We stopped at a crosswalk, the red light reflecting faintly across his face. "I don't know what label I fall under," he continued. "I don't know if this makes me bi or something else. But I know I don't want to pretend you're just my roommate." The vulnerability in that moment felt bigger than anything physical. I stepped closer. "You don't have to have the right word yet," I said. He nodded. Then he surprised me again. He reached for my hand in the middle of the sidewalk. In public. No hesitation. The light turned green, and we crossed like that. That night, back at the apartment, something shifted again. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just natural. We were standing in the kitchen, close enough that our shoulders brushed. He looked at me for a long second. "You know," he said quietly, "this isn't why I started avoiding girls." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I didn't know this was an option at first." My chest tightened. "But once I started thinking about it," he continued, "I realized I wasn't losing interest in them randomly." He stepped closer. I was making space. "For what?" I asked softly. He didn't answer with words. He just leaned in. And this time when he kissed me, there was no hesitation at all. The difference this time wasn't the kiss. It was what happened after. Caleb didn't pull away quickly like he had the first night. He didn't check my expression right away or ask if everything was okay. He stayed close. His hands settled at my sides, steady, comfortable, like this was already becoming familiar to him. When he finally leaned back, he was smiling. Not nervous, not unsure, just calm. That doesn't feel new anymore, he said. My heart did something stupid in my chest. Is that a good thing? Yeah, he said quietly. It feels like something I should have figured out sooner. We stood there for a second in the kitchen, neither of us moving. Then he did something small that somehow meant more than any of the bigger moments. He grabbed 2 glasses from the cabinet. You still want that drink? He asked casually. Like we hadn't just crossed another emotional line. Like this was just us now. The next week settled into a strange new routine. We didn't label anything. We didn't have a what are we conversation. But things changed. Morning coffee together became automatic. If we were sitting on the couch, he'd lean into me without thinking. Sometimes his hand would find my knee, my arm, my fingers. Not constant, but natural. The biggest change, though, was him. Caleb wasn't avoiding girls anymore because he was confused. He was avoiding them because he wasn't interested. At all. One night, I caught him staring at his phone with a weird expression. What? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A dating app notification. I forgot I still had this, he said. I raised an eyebrow. And he held the screen for a second. Then he deleted the app. Just like that. You don't have to do that, I said. I know. He put his phone down. I want to. There was no hesitation in his voice. That should have made everything feel secure. But a few days later, reality hit us. It happened when his friend Marcus came over. Marcus had known Caleb since high school. Loud, blunt, the kind of guy who said whatever he was thinking without a filter. The 3 of us were sitting in the living room, watching a game. At some point, Marcus looked between us, then looked again, then smirked. All right, he said. What's going on here? Caleb didn't play dumb. What do you mean? You 2 are sitting like a couple. I hadn't even realized how close we were. My shoulder was pressed against Caleb's. His arm was resting behind me along the couch. Silence stretched. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Then Caleb said it. We are. No hesitation. Marcus blinked. Then blinked again. Wait. Seriously? Yeah. Marcus leaned back slowly, processing. You? With Raymond? Caleb's tone stayed calm. Yeah. Another pause. Then Marcus said, I thought you were straight. Caleb shrugged. I thought so too. The room went quiet for a second. Then Marcus did something none of us expected. He nodded. Huh. That was it. No jokes. No weird comments. Just huh. After a minute, he added, You seem happier. Caleb glanced at me. I am. Marcus smirked slightly. All right then. Just don't get weird about it. Caleb laughed. We're the same people, man.